5 teams that you shouldn't sleep on in 2023. Let's go talk about it. Before I get started, if you are new to the channel, think about subscribing down below so you don't miss any baseball content in the 2023 season. Hit the like button, the bell button, the share button, hit all the buttons. I'm going to start this list off with an honorable mention, the LA Angels. The Angels look good going into every single season, but they always come up short. But the Angels, I think this year could be different. Taking a look, obviously, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, 2 of the best players in the world. You don't got to worry about those guys. But when I'm looking at other parts of this lineup, I really like this lineup overall. Taylor Ward was setting the world on fire last year. He was running into some injuries, but he was really good with the bat last year. Anthony Rendon, this has been one of the worst contracts in baseball over the last couple of years. Had a wrist injury last year, but he had a good spring. He's looking good. I think Anthony Rendon is a comeback player of the year candidate. I could see a good season out of him. Newest additions, Hunter Renfroe, Brandon Drury. I like those 2 adds for the Angels. Renfroe is a good power hitter. Drury is going to give you some versatility and a pretty decent bat. Like those 2. And Gio Urshela, you traded for in the offseason. I think he's a really solid player. He's going to bring you some decent defense. And then Logan O'Hoppe, a young catcher. I feel like they haven't just had a solid guy at the catching position for a bit now. I like the way this lineup is looking for the Angels. I think it could be a top 10 offense. And when I'm looking at the starting pitching, Shohei Ohtani obviously is amazing, but I'm looking at these other guys, Sandoval, Anderson, Detmers, and Suarez. Anderson, I'm not quite sure if he does what he did with the Dodgers last year, but this is a guy that's going to go out there. He's going to make all of his starts. He's going to give you innings. I think that's always going to be a positive for your rotation. Sandoval is an underrated guy. He looked good in the World Baseball Classic against Japan. I think he's going to have himself a pretty solid year. Reed Detmers isn't even 24 years old yet, threw a no-hitter. I think Reed Detmers is going to continue to get better and better and better. I like Jose Suarez at the back. I think this is a pretty underrated starting rotation, and they had some pretty good starting pitching last year. Don't forget that about the Angels from last year. The problem with the Angels is the bullpen, but if they can put this together, I think they could end up being okay back here. I'm a little unsure about Estevez, but I like the addition of Matt Moore. You got some other decent arms here like Tepera and Loop, so we'll just have to see what ends up happening with this bullpen. That is, to me, the weak part of this team. But I think if the Angels can put this together, I think they could surprise a lot of people this year, and I think they could make the playoffs. Now let's get to the actual list. Starting it off, I have the Texas Rangers. I think a lot of people see this Rangers team as being maybe a year or 2 away, but I think this team could jump the gun this year, and they could be really good. Take a look at this Rangers team, starting off with the rotation. This rotation could be one of the best in baseball if everything comes together. Obviously, with Jacob deGrom, he's the best pitcher on the planet when he is healthy. If he can give you 25, 30 starts, that is going to be amazing for this ball club. And taking a look at other guys like Nathan Eovaldi, Andrew Heaney, they struggled with health last year. How are they going to be this coming year? Martin Perez, this is a guy who had a breakout year last year. Can he keep it going? John Gray, I think, will be fine. He's good in the 4 spot for me. But this rotation could be one of the best in baseball if everything comes together and they're healthy over a full season. When I take a look at this lineup, I mean, I love a lot of the pieces in this lineup. Corey Seager, I think, could have a bust-out year. I think he could have a career year this year, taking away the shift. He struggled against the shift last year. I think Corey Seager could have himself a really excellent season. I love Marcus Semien. I think he's one of the more underappreciated players in the game. Nate Lowe, speaking of underappreciated, he went really under the radar last year. A good season last year. Adolis Garcia, this is a guy that hits home runs, drives in runs, and hey, that's not a bad bat to have in your lineup. Josh Young, good young bat in this lineup. Look out for him. Jonah Heim, he had a bit of an increase in production when it came to his offense last year. Good on defense. You know, I'm liking the Rangers lineup, and I'm liking their rotation if these guys are healthy and making their starts. One weak point of this team, though, is the bullpen. I'm not quite sure what this bullpen is what they're going to be. You know, you got Leclerc at the back end. I think that's fine, but I feel like there needs to be some improvements here, and guys are going to really have to step up in this bullpen to make this happen. If everything comes together for the Rangers this year, I think they could be a good team, and I definitely think they could be in the hunt for a wild card. And if this team does make the playoffs, you would have Jacob deGrom for Game 1, Nathan Eovaldi for Game 2. Nathan Eovaldi has done really well in the postseason in the past. I wouldn't want to go up against this Rangers pitching in the postseason. That's just me. Up next, I have the Miami Marlins. Speaking of pitching, let's talk the Miami Marlins. They got some good pitching. You got the Cy Young, Sandy Alcantara at the top of the rotation. Jesus Luzardo, he was looking really bad just a couple of years ago, but it looks like the Marlins have got him back on track. Edward Cabrera, Cabrera, this is a breakout candidate. This guy's got great stuff. I'm excited to see what he can do. Trevor Rogers, he is a bounce back candidate. This was a guy just a couple of years ago. He was in the running for Rookie of the Year. This is a guy who's got good stuff. Had some struggles last year, but he could definitely bounce back this coming year. And you got a veteran in Johnny Cueto. Never hurts to have a veteran like him in your rotation. I really like this starting pitching. And the lineup, I think, has some pretty decent pieces to it. You got the MLB The Show cover boy, Jazz Chisholm Jr. Over a full season, this guy could be really good. Man, he is just phenomenal. I really want to see what he can do over a full season. If you take a look at his 2022 numbers, he did miss a lot of time, only had 241 plate appearances, but during that time, he had a .535 slugging, 14 homers, and 12 stolen bases. This guy is electric. I really want to see what he can do over 150 to 160 games. But taking a look at other parts of the lineup, I like Luis Arraez. This is a guy that they got for Pablo Lopez in the offseason. This guy makes a ton of contact. I think this is the perfect guy for the Marlins to put at the top of your lineup to set the tone for the rest of the lineup. Jorge Soler, last year he was running into some injuries, kind of a down year for Jorge Soler, but we know what he can do with the bat. He can bring a lot of power, a full season of health. I think Jorge Soler, this is a guy that's going to be great for the middle of your order. I like Garrett Cooper. This is a guy that gets on base. I think he's a pretty decent bat to have in your lineup as well. You got some other decent pieces. Brian De La Cruz, this guy could break out this year. He showed some good advanced numbers last year. And you got some other pieces. Also, Gene Segura was another guy you added in the offseason. Hey, Gene Segura, he's one of the more solid players in the game. He did have some health issues last year, but this guy was playing in the World Series for the Phillies. I think he could end up being a really solid addition. And like I was talking about with the Rangers, I think the bullpen could be an issue with the Marlins, but you got a couple of decent names in here. Matt Barnes, can he get his career back on track? AJ Puck was a former top prospect. Can he get himself together with the Marlins? He's listed as a possible closer here. You got JT Chagua. He's had success in his career. Last year, it was only 22 and a third innings, but he had a 2.42 ERA. So this Marlins team, and they got prospects as well, guys that could come up and maybe help out this year. I think this Marlins team, it's tough in that division with the Mets, the Braves, the Phillies, but don't sleep on this team. Maybe they could go on a run. When you got good pitching, anything can happen. Up next, I have the Baltimore Orioles. The Baltimore Orioles were a fun team last year, exceeding expectations. Not a lot of people thought they were going to win more than 70 games last year, but they ended up finishing with a record of 83 and 79. They were in the hunt for a wild card spot down the stretch. They were a fun team to watch, but a lot of people are thinking they're going to take a bit of a step back this year. They're getting a lot of comparisons to the Tigers of last year. Remember the Tigers a couple of years ago? They were looking really good. They exceeded expectations, and people thought they were going to take the next step, and they ended up just being a complete bust last year. But I think the Orioles could be different this year. When I take a look at this Orioles team, I'm taking a look at Adley Rutschman. This guy is a special player, man. This is going to be one of the best catchers in the game for a long time. I think when you just have this kind of a guy who's just great all around, good on defense, has a great bat, but he works well with the pitching staff, I think that's very underrated in the game. I really like Adley Rutschman a lot. When you got a guy like this at the catcher position, I think any team has a chance at being good, but obviously it takes more as well. Gunnar Henderson, this is a fun young player. He could be an electric player this year. Definitely a Rookie of the Year candidate. I still like Cedric Mullins. He was better in the second half last year. Got off to a bit of a slow start. A power bat and an Anthony Santander, a decent bat and an Austin Hayes. You add him Adam Frazier. Now, I'm not saying he's going to change the game for you, but he's a guy who makes a lot of contact. He can put the ball in play. I think this lineup, I think it could be at least a top 15 lineup. I think the lineup will be just fine. The problem with this Orioles team is the pitching. They are lacking like a clear ace. Grayson Rodriguez not making the opening day roster, was having some struggles in spring, so they want him to kind of work out some kinks down in the minor leagues before he comes up, but he will be up eventually. That's an electric arm, man. I'm really excited to see him come up, but it's not like you have a bad rotation. It's not amazing by any means. You got a lot of 3s and 4s in this rotation, even 5s. Gibson, Kramer, Irvin. The one thing I like about this rotation is they will give you innings. I think that is a pretty underrated aspect of pitching, is simply just being able to give you innings. And if they can keep you in the game, I think you got a chance, because you have a decent bullpen here. Felix Bautista, he took over after Jorge Lopez got traded, and he was just fine in that role. They got some good projected numbers, at least at the back end of the bullpen. Middle relief doesn't look too great, but I think if you can get the ball to these guys at the back end of the bullpen, I think you have a chance. I think this Orioles team, I think they could be better than what the Tigers were last year, where the Tigers took a major step back. I think the Orioles are going to be right around the same. Could they go on another run? We'll just have to wait and see. But also, one more thing I want to add. Out of the park baseball, I've ran a lot of simulations on out of the park baseball. I ran 10 of them, and 5 out of the 10 simulations, the Orioles made the playoffs. Out of the park baseball is very good when it comes to the simulations. They're pretty accurate for the most part. And for the Orioles to make the playoffs, 5 out of 10 of the simulations that I ran, I don't know, that's saying something. I think this team, at the very least, has a chance to go on another run this year. I'm excited to see what they do. Staying in the American League East, up next, I have my Boston Red Sox. Here come the Giraffe Neck Robbie comments now. I can see them all over the place, but hear me out. I've seen a lot of Red Sox teams over the years, and this team, I think, actually looks pretty good. This team, believe it or not, reminds me a lot of the 2013 Red Sox. If you go take a look at some of these players, they were signing guys prior to that season that were coming off injury-plagued seasons or down seasons, like Shane Victorino, Mike Napoli, David Ross, Johnny Gomes. I mean, this team, you're relying on guys like Victorino and Napoli to start games for you, and people were wondering, what were they even going to give you? But look what ended up happening with that team. Ended up winning a World Series. And if you remember, going into that season, not a lot of people were very high on the Red Sox that year. Let's go to some Reddit conversation, shall we? A lot of people in here picking the Red Sox that year to finish in last place. A lot of people were high on the Blue Jays going into 2013, but right here, Red Sox, last place. Right here, Red Sox, last place, 77 wins. Here we go, Red Sox again, last place. A lot of people when talking about that season, we're picking the Red Sox to finish last. Let's go to a Bleacher Report article. In this one, they had the Red Sox at 14 in their power rankings going into that season after coming off of a 69-93 season. So, they had them at least middle of the road. Taking a look at another Bleacher Report article, they had the Red Sox finishing in last place, 77-85. Let's go to Pinstripe Alley. Oh my, Yankee fans galore. Taking a look at their predictions, every single one of them they were all making their picks. Every single one of them that year had the Red Sox finishing last. Another last. That's pretty hilarious, like when you just go through it. So many people were just so low on the Red Sox that year, and I'm seeing a lot of that this year as well. But when I'm looking at this team, it's not a bad-looking team. Sure, you don't have Xander Bogaerts anymore. That was not a very popular move this past offseason, but they made a lot of additions to make up for that loss. Masataka Yoshida, he balled out in the World Baseball Classic. I'm really excited to see what he does. You added a guy like Justin Turner, who's going to give you a good bat, and he's going to be good in the clubhouse as well. Adam Duvall, good power bat. Kike Hernandez, you're going to be getting him back for a full season. He was dealing with some injuries last year. Tristan Casas is going to be really good at getting on base. Obviously, you still have Rafael Devers. Chris Sale, hopefully a full season of health for him. If you go back to that 2013 team, you had John Lester on that team. I think Chris Sale can provide, a similar presence like Lester did. And you got upside in this rotation. You got some younger guys as well, like Brian Bale, Garrett Whitlock, that could end up being really good for you in this rotation. James Paxton, let's see if he can actually finally pitch. So this rotation has upside as well, a veteran presence like Corey Kluber as well. And then the bullpen is looking really strong, if you ask me. Kenley Jansen at the back end, good setup guys, and Chris Martin and Schreiber, good middle relief guys like Blyer. I'm excited about this team this year. And I don't know if they're going to be able to win the division, but if you go back to 2013, no one had that team. Even, I think maybe I saw one person out of all the articles I was reading had them finishing in like 4th place. I think I saw maybe 1 3rd place, but no one had them finishing in 1st. Could this Red Sox team shock the world and win the division? Now, I'm not going to go that far, but I definitely think they could win a wild card. I think more people need to give this team a chance. I would not sleep on the Red Sox this year. Last but not least, I have the Arizona Diamondbacks. This is my pick to be the surprise team of the year. Last year, I picked the Cleveland Guardians to be the surprise team. Not a lot of people were giving them a chance, but they ended up making the playoffs. I had them being a good team last year. I wasn't quite sure how far they were going to go, but I'm thinking the same thing for the Diamondbacks this year, and here's why. When I'm looking at this lineup, I see a good mix of veterans and younger guys. Younger guys like Corbin Carroll, you got Jake McCarthy in here, Alec Thomas, Gabriel Moreno. Love those 4 guys. I think that's really just good young talent to have in your lineup. And then you got some veteran guys as well, like I could tell Marte. This guy's an electric player if he's healthy. Jake McCarthy provided a lot of power for you. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., that's a good bat to add. You brought him back in the Dalton Varsho trade. I think this is a decent looking lineup, and I think there's a bunch of guys that can just do different things in this lineup. I like the way it looks. And then you brought in a veteran guy like an Evan Longoria. Kyle Lewis could be a bounce back candidate as well. I'm a little low on the starting pitching as a whole, but I do like Gallen and Merrill Kelly at the top. I think they could use another guy. Madison Bumgarner at this point, he is what he is, but I do like some of these younger guys here, like a Ryan Nelson and a Dre Jameson. Look out for these 2 guys. They're good young arms. They had good seasons last year in small sample sizes. I think they could make some noise this year. And the bullpen, I'm a little worried about this bullpen. Mark Melancon, he's going to be on the IL for a little bit, but I do like Ginkel and Chafin at the back. Joe Mantiply was pretty good last year as a setup guy. I think he could be pretty good at middle relief. I think the bullpen has some decent pieces here, but the Diamondbacks as well, they just have a good farm, and they got good young players in that farm that could come up this year and make an impact. I think this Diamondbacks team is good. I'm not saying they're going to be winning this division with the Dodgers and the Padres at the top there, but when I'm looking at this team, I absolutely think they could be a team that could land that 3rd wild card spot. There's going to be a lot of competition for that 3rd wild card, but I think they could go under the radar, and they could do it. I think they could make the playoffs this year. But let me know what you think down below. Do you agree with these sleeper teams? Am I missing any other teams? Let me know down below in the comments what you think. But that's all I have for right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.